Should we talk about the book now?
Let's do
Sure.
it.
Let's do it. All right, The
Okay.
Tempest by Shakespeare. Liam, do we need to
Are we gonna
summarize
cut it
this
out? I
book?
guess we'll just. Oh, um, no.
We'll just
Yes, we
assume
should. No, we should summarize a little bit.
we should summarize a bit. Okay.
Well, I mean, everyone's read it if they're watching this, I think. But it's about a shipwrecked group of people who just happened to be shipwrecked on the exact same island where they banished this guy named Prospero and his daughter. And there's already people on the island, and it's very much considered an allegory for like colonialism. Uh, yeah. Why don't we do first impression? You want to go ahead, Thomas?
Yeah, I really loved it. It was a lot funnier than I remember. I mean, even the beginning of the book, um, the boatswain immediately telling the king of Naples just that he has no authority there, and unless he can command the winds, he should basically piss off. And there's lots of jokes. Um, yeah, it was a good and it was short. It was a lot shorter than I remember.
Mm.
I breezed through it, and it seems that it has a lot of momentum too. Like the story kind of like carries itself very well. I don't know how to put it, but David, what'd you think?
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I read this last year, so it was really nice to read it with a kind of new, fresh set of eyes. That's one of the things that struck me about it too, is it feels like no scene is wasted, even any inch of dialogue. Like it's a very compact story and a very compact play. Um, compared to some of other Shakespeare's work, sometimes like a play like Hamlet is very long, dense, epic story. Here it feels like this is kind of like a short story almost.
Mm.
Humor I picked up a lot on too. Like it was pretty funny. I think it was Act Two, Scene One, when Alonso's grieving and Sebastian and Antonio are just basically being total jerks and just totally making fun of him and the whole situation. So yeah, I thought it was a really good story. It was very moving. I mean, you're dealing with one of the greatest writers ever, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's
This
really
is
hard. It's really hard to like not enjoy it.
yeah. This is like for me, anyways. This is my favorite Shakespeare play, and it's like the this is the top of English literature. I feel like because it's got the romance of Romeo and Juliet. He's got the epic speeches that Hamlet has. It has comedy with the Stefano Trinculo and Caliban that I really
Yes.
liked. I like those parts, and yeah, it's just got everything I feel like, and it's just so almost every single scene is like I find really great. I Stratford, Ontario, Stratford Festival. They have there's this really famous adaptation of The Tempest that they did with Martha
Christopher
Henry.
Plummer, or is it
No,
Martha
Christopher Plummer. I know that one. The one I
Okay.
love. I fell in love with it. I watched it a while ago, and I just became obsessed with it. And they really bring. They have like these Canadian comic actors that play Stefano and Trinculo, and they're like really good.
Okay.
Um, yeah. Anyways,
Wait,
that's my.
who plays Prospero in that one?
It's a female actress from Chicago named Martha Henry,
Martha
which
Henry.
actually works. I don't know. They only had to change like one or two lines, like from he to she, and other than that, the play is unchanged. Like I and her Prospero is so good. It's like this balancing act, as with all Shakespeare characters. You have to have like the bully that Prospero sometimes is, the slave master, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and then also the like sort of loving father, in this case mother, and she does that really well.
Mm-hmm. There's also like the forgiveness aspect of Prospero's character as well.
Mm,
Right, like at the end, you mean like when she sort of frees Ariel and Caliban?
Um, yeah, or even just
Yeah,
he forgives his brother for like basically plotting his life and
yeah.
you know attempted murder. um, and he also it's strange that he I found it was strange that he condemns Caliban, Stefano, and Trinculo, but he doesn't condemn um, Antonio and Ferdinand.
mm.
Like
Yeah, I
he
guess.
mentions to he like whispers to Ferdinand that like I know that you were plotting
Yeah.
to kill the king, but I won't tell on you. I won't snitch, bro.
Yeah, that is one thing that reading the final act, it's more so he's forgiving Alonso, but not his brother necessarily. That's one thing I kind of picked up on
Mm.
is his focus is a lot on Alonso, but as you were kind of saying, he doesn't really forgive Antonio too much um, about the whole plotting to kill the king part.
Yeah, because I feel that Prospero's, at least his tone, just like it shifts so dramatically from like bloody rage to like
Yeah.
absolute bliss and forgiveness. Like especially the most famous scene of the play. You do look, my son, in a moved sword, as if you were dismayed. Like he is trying to. Well, what are their names? Miranda and
Ferdinand.
Ferdinand see Prospero like in an absolute rage because he knows that Caliban and Trinculo and Stefano are on their way to kill him, and he's just like losing his shit. And then he immediately flips a switch, and then he sees Ferdinand and says to Ferdinand like, you know, you look troubled, like don't stress, basically. So there's like this you know, balancing between rage, which is justified, and then forgiveness, which I found was very strange and
Yeah,
interesting.
that the rarer acts, the rarer action is in virtue than in vengeance. It's a
Mm,
famous line, and
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that's a
it is.
great
It's
line.
yeah, it's a great line. It's true. Like, Prospero sort of. Yeah, I don't know. I've never really like he does switch between vengeance and forgiveness. Like he's not always one thing, and it
hmm
kind of seems arbitrary which one he chooses. And then at the end, of course, he forgives
Well, I
everyone.
think it's the marriage that really allows him to see the sort of beauty beyond the vengeance, if that makes sense.
Mm,
And in a way too, like if you're thinking about it pragmatically, by marrying, his daughter with Ferdinand, he's establishing a kind of new order, not only for himself but for his own family too. So that might give him
right.
more justification to say,
Oh,
at this
that's
point,
true. Yeah.
I'm going to forgive. Now, is that really true forgiveness at that point? I don't know.
Right.
Because
Because he's
maybe
back
he's
in
looking at
power.
it just through the sort of pragmatic lens of power and a lot of the play has to do with power and authority as we've talked about as well. And maybe that's related to that.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
he's not
that's
only
great.
establishing like a new generation and a new order, he's establishing a new kingdom,
Yeah.
essentially, and to reign over a people. And that's actually, I read in the introduction that that was like, you know, very much on people's minds who were watching the play because it was really often, it was very common that, you know, English royalty would marry off like to the Queen of Spain or like, you know, Princess of France or something to establish allegiances and to prevent conflict.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to just bring up there's this great line when they're so Miranda and Ferdinand are courting and like there's some great poetry and then Prospero says he has to but this swift business I must uneasy make lest too light winning make the prize light. Did you guys get that line? That
Yeah.
I was so shocked at that. I was like, oh my God. This is why Harold Bloom says like he invented the modern human. Like all those like if it's too easy, you're not gonna love it. You're not gonna like it. So he's trying to make the courtship more difficult so that when they finally come together, it's gonna be, it's gonna be more lasting.
Yeah, and he accuses Ferdinand of plotting to take his island essentially to usurp him. He accuses him of attempting to usurp him.
Yeah, makes him do all these chores, makes
Yeah,
him, yeah, doesn't
and
treat
then
him well.
he like, but in doing so, Ferdinand kind of proves his love
Yeah.
because at the very beginning, like I don't know, but how you guys felt about it, but like the love between them didn't really seem
No,
that
it doesn't make any sense.
it didn't seem
Mm.
that real. Like he's the only male that she's ever seen, and
Yeah.
then and then Um, oh shit, what was I gonna say?
It's like she just falls in love with him instantly, like as soon as she
Yeah.
sees him. Basically,
At
she's
the
like, "I
first
love
sight, they
this
have
guy."
exchanged
It's love at
eyes.
the first sight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then Ferdinand says that like he's had a bunch of like relationships already, but they've all failed because there was something wrong with the woman, and it's like that's a major red flag right there.
Well,
Yeah.
it
Like if any dude is like telling you that his ex was always the problem, you know he was the
yeah,
problem.
yeah, exactly. Well, it's interesting too because I was reading kind of like some articles by some critics, and it's interesting in the ending how they're playing a chess game, which is kind of uh, like some people have interpreted that as kind of foreshadowing sort of their potential marital problems in the future. Again, it's all up to speculation, and it's
Mm,
also has to deal with how the play is staged too, because that creates a lot of meaning, like how the actors embody a scene ultimately helps with an interpretation of the story. Um, but I think she accuses him of cheating
she does, yeah.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so it could be you could stage it and have it a very like playful scene where it's just, they're just kind of joking around, or you could stage it as more serious, and maybe that is foreshadowing potential sort of conflict in the future in their relationship, because it happens again, as you were saying, relatively quick
Mm,
throughout the story. So although the ending has a sort of like restoration and people are coming together, forgiveness, perhaps there's a lot of ambiguity in what the future holds for these people.
mm. Yeah, there's like there's also like the dichotomy of Shakespeare that after reading like his comedies, you feel really good, like it's a feel good experience, but then you read the tragedies, like you read King Lear, and it's just you feel awful after.
Yeah.
It's like the highs and lows of human experience. It's
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why the Tempest is sort of, and you could say like Winter's Tale even, they're kind of unique plays. Oh, I don't like that word unique, but they're they're distinct. They're sort of tragic comedies in a
mm,
way. I would say the Tempest is more of a comedy, not in terms of the humor, but it ends on a optimistic note, right?
mm,
And I know there's debate as to how people classify this play because it is different from a
mm,
lot of his standard comedies and his standard tragedies.
yeah. I would say it is. Yeah, it is very funny, and there are a lot of funny
It is
moments.
funny, yeah.
Like one of the one of the better jokes, at least when I've seen it staged. The joke that always comes off is like is when Miranda asks Prospero, like, "Aren't you my father?" And then and then he says, "Your mother was a piece of virtue, and she has said that you are my daughter." So that joke always comes off. But yeah, I was reading the introduction, and I was saying how the play does border on the tragic. Very like we witnessed two attempted murders, like
Yeah.
like plots against people's lives, which has its political implications. But yeah, the play has a lot to do with power, which is
Yeah.
a serious subject. Yeah,
Yeah.
Liam.
You also get sadness and from Ariel and Caliban. I feel like if they're played right, there's like a mix of um, Caliban is a not good character, and yet he's also very sympathetic at times, and same with Ariel. Um, yeah, yeah, it's hard to get those right. I feel like when I've seen other productions, those like Prospero is like, or sorry, Caliban is like a monster, an evil thing. I don't know. It's like I said before, all you need that balance for every Shakespeare character, and it can be hard to get.
You want to get the sympathy and the sort of, because he is a villain, but in some ways, just even how characters refer to him, like Miranda, she's just
Mm.
totally like there. I think it's in the first scene. She's just totally ripping him apart in terms
Yeah.
of
Well,
uh,
he's supposed to he sort of admits to trying to rape Miranda,
Mm.
and that's
yeah,
yeah, and so okay, there's that, and then okay, so everyone tries to sell Caliban. I don't know if anyone clocked this, but like every time someone sees him, they like comment on how much he would be worth back in England, and
Yeah,
how much that like a beggar would pay a penny to see this wonder.
And he's like compared to a fish quite
Right,
often.
right.
yes.
Yeah.
There's a great line where he says, Trinculo, I think, says, they will not give a penny to relieve a lame beggar, but they'll give 10 to see a weird fish man.
Yeah, remember that line?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. No, I think that's the problem with staging this play as well, because I read in the introduction that there's a line that Miranda says. She calls Caliban uh, like a monster essentially, and sometimes that line is actually given to Prospero to make her
right.
seem more
Yeah,
innocent. And
Right.
but all of these characters have their like flaws and idiosyncrasies that make them who they are. Like, and there's also stagings that try to show Prospero as like this noble magician, and then there's others that try to make him seem as like this tyrant. But he's both, and it's hard
yeah.
to play this off. And I
Well,
think
I
on the note of Caliban, I think he's given one of the most beautiful moments in the entire play, where he says, "The clouds methought would open and show riches ready to drop upon me, that when I waked I cried to dream again." And it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, I like that part too.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Uh, my hot take is that that line that's debated whether it's Prospero or Miranda is actually Prospero. Something just went wrong and like they mislabeled it or whatever, because it doesn't make any sense if you really think about it. Like, because this is just my take. That line, it's like near the beginning. It's talking about teaching Caliban how to speak English, and
Right.
Caliban has a great comeback. Like, I've learned your language and now I know how to curse, and that's all I've learned.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, that line really only makes sense if it's like, why would Miranda be teaching Caliban how to speak English,
Speak
especially if
English.
she's a young girl? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
No, I think you got a good case for it. What about Ariel? Because I know Ariel's a very fascinating character too in the play. It's kind of amorphous spirit.
Yeah, it's kind of an it rather than he
It's
or
kind of
she.
an it, yeah, exactly, or whatever you want to call it. But I find Ariel's another interesting character in that, again, it's similar to Caliban in that ultimately Ariel's serving Prospero, and there's this sort of pact that they have, but Ariel's yearning for the freedom. Um, and so they're kind of foils in a way for each other, where you have Caliban, who's just totally like, Prospero has no regard. But Ariel, if it wasn't for Ariel, Prospero wouldn't be able to do all this sort of magic trickery, and all his
Right.
power really comes from the subjugation of Ariel and this sort of deal they allegedly have.
Yeah, this is a really interesting question about where the magic comes from, and it's
Yeah,
not totally explained, and it's kind of I still find it like difficult to. So he gets it from his cape, from one of his garments, but also from his books. But also
Mm.
there are spirits that help him, and of course Ariel helps him. Um, yeah, Ariel's kind of more sympathetic to me than Caliban, and
yeah,
he clearly wants his freedom very badly, but then he has to pay a debt, and like Prospero's reminding him, "You owe me big time because I saved you."
he saved her,
Mm.
him,
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah. But in the in Prospero's subjugation of Ariel, he becomes uh, Prospero, that is, becomes as bad as Sycorax, who imprisoned Ariel in the first place. Like, he
Yeah,
becomes an awful slave
yeah,
master essentially.
yeah. That's a great point.
yeah,
You see this like you see the same thing playing out when Sycorax was the queen or whatever. Like Caliban goes to Prospero and says, "I hate Sycorax," or like I feel like I can see that happening. Caliban like always being dissatisfied with whoever's in charge, and I believe that's hinted at somewhere. I don't remember quite where, but she is not nice to Ariel. I know that.
Yeah,
Sycorax.
Sycorax imprisons Ariel within an acorn, I believe, or within a
yeah,
pine cone for
Something like
basically
that.
eternity, and was in there for decades. by the time that Prospero showed up and then
Mm.
freed them. But also, it seems that Ariel has done Prospero's bidding for so long that Ariel has already repaid for, like, uh, in bounds what
Yeah.
Prospero's done for them. So Prospero becomes basically this like slave driver who's like, okay, I just need you to help me with one more thing, and then
One
one
more
more
Yeah.
thing,
thing,
one more
and then
thing,
one
one
more
more
thing, and then you'll
thing.
get your freedom finally. But Prospero's magic, I believe, comes from because at the end he vows to bury his staff and then also like drown his books essentially.
Yes.
And there's actually parallels uh, to that, and this being Shakespeare's final play that he's putting down
Yes.
the pen for good essentially.
I've heard that too, and I've heard also the interpretation that magic is just an allegory for the stage and for the power of theatrics. And Prospero's kind of like the director almost, or the playwright, in that,
Mm,
in some ways he kind of has unlimited power with his magic. Like, it ultimately works in his favor. Every scheme, every plan that is attempted to foil his sort of authority is just quickly solved by Ariel or his sort of magical powers. So I've read that interpretation too. And then the ending of the play, he's giving up his magic. So it's like a farewell, as you were saying, to sort of the stage and that sort of power that he has.
mm.
Um, okay, we're talking about the last thing that Caliban says.
Do you want to read what
He's
the last line that
Yeah,
Caliban says?
Is
yeah.
it in what lines?
It is scene Act 5, Scene 1. It's like right below 290. I that I will, and I'll be wise hereafter and seek for grace. What a thrice double ass was I to take this drunkard for a god and worship this dull fool.
Oh, that's a great line.
Yeah. Does it seem Christian to you? When I was going over the play for this podcast, it felt more Christian than I remember.
Mm.
Like seek for grace. I don't
Yeah, I was
know.
thinking that's
Yes.
like the savage has been converted. That's like kind of the
Maybe,
feeling that I
yeah.
got.
He's having a moment of enlightenment.
It's come to God moment.
Yes. Yes. Well, he says seek for grace. Um, yeah, that's a pretty Christian idea. Uh,
Which is interesting. I don't really think of Shakespeare as a Christian writer.
I know there's a
Um,
lot of debate about that. Like, some people are, very firm. He seems more. I think I don't know if it's just Christians or people who know Christianity are just applying the Christian values and then finding evidence, or if it's more the values are in the
right.
play and people are just uncovering them. Like, I always
Uh,
wonder that.
you
But
know what? No, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
Okay. There's this. It's a really deep cut. Okay, Jermaine Greer on this. Like, do you remember those Australian panels called Q, and they would have these like public intellectuals debate stuff. And they have one about Shakespeare, and she says that there's no philosophy that can't be read into Shakespeare. Like every single thing in the world, they all quote Shakespeare, and you can read anything into it. So
Yeah.
that Christian, if he's a Christian intellectual or a writer, he's not. I don't know. It's so hard to parse
It's
any of that.
it is, and I mean, like, I it's hard to tell because when you read this, it seems, there's a lot of references to Ovid. I mean,
Mm,
in any Shakespeare play, really.
right, right.
There's a huge sort of there's a lot of allusions to Roman mythology, which is basically the extension of Greek mythology. So he seems to be more interested in that in terms of on a referential level, but I kind of like that take in the sense that he covers everything, so it's just all in there, which I think is part of the genius behind Shakespeare.
Yeah,
Like, you can
yeah.
find it's like one just giant sort of corpus of everything. I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. He's, you know what? In my mind, he's almost like, in the really broad sense, he's Christian. And then maybe not so much in like the very specific,
Mm.
like, his plays aren't moralizing. He's not didactic. He's not trying to like have a very simple lesson that you take away.
Yeah, and I was thinking of well, David, I'm teaching assistant for BW's visionary class,
Right.
and
Great course.
great course. And
Yeah.
for before Dante, for thousands of years, essentially, art was basically just a tool that was used to serve God. Like everything
Yeah.
that was written was in service of this higher power. But after Dante, or what Dante did was he sort of like inverted that, and then art became the highest ideal, and everything that um, was like everything that was written was in service of art and not the other way around.
And if you read a lot of like even minus like Beowulf, but like uh what are those? It's like a cycle of plays, medieval plays. It has that sort of I forget the name because I read it a while back. I'll have to remember, but those plays are ultimately, as you were saying, they're Christian didactic messages at the very end. Like it's very clear that the narrative that it's presenting is serving that sort of Christian value or that value that it's trying to teach.
Mm.
I'll just have to look
Morality
up.
plays? Is that what you're trying to
Yeah,
say?
the
Or you?
morality plays. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Uh, so it's uh the Shepherds play. Sorry, I'm bad with names sometimes.
No one remembers them because they're not very good. I read some of them. I read some of them. Yeah,
They have
yeah.
some nice moments.
Yes, they have some nice moments, but it's not Shakespeare.
That's the best
No,
you
no,
can say
no.
about them is they have moments.
Uh,
Yeah, so they're about teaching a lesson, and the world they build is not one where a Prospero is a tyrant and a good king. It's a place where virtue is very clearly distinct from sin, and
yes,
it's, I feel like,
every man. That's the one.
Everyman. Oh, is that
Yeah,
the
yeah.
name of the play?
Yes, yes. Every man. I think it was in an English morality play.
Does it have an
Uh,
author?
it might be anonymous. Yeah, they don't know,
Hmm.
but it's very much yeah, it's very much rooted in that sort of
Yeah,
uh
yeah, and I noticed at those, yeah, those plays that so they got the good guy, the bad guy. And I feel like in Shakespeare you have that same thing, but it's in one character. You have you got the good guy, the bad guy in the same character, which makes them interesting.
Hmm. I immediately think of Merchant of Venice,
Which
yes.
where
character? Like,
um, Shylock has that speech where he says that like, "Don't I bleed as well, like a Christian?" And it's
mm,
like very strange for for Shakespeare to humanize the villain in the play. It's cool.
And
Same thing
yeah,
with Caliban.
yeah, and to a certain extent Othello too. Mind you, what's his name? The main villain of the play,
Iago.
Iago. He's just a total villain. Like there's really
Mm,
I don't think there's much, and some people have noted that as a potential flaw of the play. I,
Hmm.
I don't see it as that, but you get that sort of even in the tragedies where the hero does something really bad or makes a mistake, there's an element of humanization in that, and you get that sort of I don't know. I think what Shakespeare accomplishes is a very deep sense of internal conflict in all of the characters, especially the
yeah.
lead characters,
Hmm.
and you see that specifically in Prospero too. Like it's not like he's just some good guy per se, but rather he is a tyrant. He is vengeful, but there's a sort of coming together in the end. But um, I think
Yeah.
that's the brilliance of Shakespeare. I think he doesn't allow sort of I don't know what his own morality is, but he doesn't allow that to interfere with the conflicts facing the characters.
Mm.
and he allows the characters to speak for themselves.
Yeah, I was just thinking that Iago's given one of my favorite lines in Othello. It's Desdemona, right? Is the name
Yes,
of
Desdemona.
Mm.
yeah. There's this the one character who's like basically simping over Desdemona, and Iago says to him essentially that I've been around the world 7 times and I've never met a man who knew how to love himself. And it's like, well,
Mm.
yeah.
I always remember put money in thy purse. I don't
Mm.
know. Iago keeps saying that too.
He's saying that to the same guy because the guy
Mm.
he's only concerned about
I
girls
forget what his
essentially.
name is.
Yeah, I do too.
Let me look
He's not a
it up.
big character. He's like
No, no.
No.
He's part of his scheme.
Yeah, and he kind of like begins the momentum of the play and the plot to basically make Othello incredibly
It's
jealous.
Rodrigo.
mm,
Rodrigo,
Yeah.
yeah, and Rodrigo's just obsessed with Desdemona, and yeah, Iago's telling him like, you know, quit worrying about the ladies, get your money right, essentially. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. OG Andrew Tate. Yeah, that
yeah,
guy.
yeah.
Okay, well, you know what? I still have one more thing from the Tempest. Okay, this speech is so good. That Prospero gives in the beginning of Act 5. Um, so he's talking to the like it's the Ye Elves of Hills speech, and it's just so good. You demi puppets that by the moonshine to make the green sour ringlets make, whereof the you not bites, and you whose pastime is to make midnight mushrooms, that rejoice to hear the solemn curfew, by whose aid, weak masters though ye be, I have bedimmed the moontide sun, and called forth the mutinous winds, and twixt the green sea and the azure vault, set roaring war. And it goes on. It's just I love that speech, and there's so many places like that where um this play is like just amazing.
Wait, where exactly is it in the play?
It's Act 5, Scene 1. On
Yeah.
I have the discount Folger edition.
I yeah, Thomas. I think we have the same edition, and it's
Are you Oxford?
Yeah, I'm
yes.
Oxford
I got.
gang.
Oh, wow.
I found this actually at a thrift store for like $3, so
Good
score.
for you.
Yeah, 189 on our edition, Thomas. I think that speech is from Ovid. Some from Metamorphosis,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, yeah. It says in my
Wait, Act 5, Scene 1?
Yeah,
189?
yeah.
I have Ferdinand. Sir, she is mortal, but by immortal providence she's mine.
Oh, that's weird. Act 5, Scene 1, like line 35.
Oh, line 35. I thought you said 189.
No, page 189.
it is from Ovid. It says this invocation of spirits draws heavily on Medea's invocation in Book 7 of Ovid's Metamorphoses. Shakespeare seems to have used both the original Latin and Goldling's 1567 English version.
Yeah, I appreciate him copying other writers, like being very shameless.
Yeah, apparently the We Are Such Stuff as Dreams Are Made On speech is also a rip-off
Oh,
of another
really?
speech. Yeah.
Well, that's like one of my
Hmm.
favorite lines.
Yeah, from who?
It's not a rip-off, but it is a paraphrase. Let me find it exactly.
I think it's also did you ever see the Maltese Falcon?
Is it a movie?
Yeah, well, it's a crime book, and then they adapted it into a movie with Humphrey Bogart. The movie's good.
It,
I like the book a little better,
okay, no,
but the
I haven't.
movie is a very good adaptation of the book. But one of
Okay.
they changed the ending, and when he's looking at the Falcon, he says, "This is the stuff dreams are made of." It's like that's
Mm,
exactly from. I wonder if he pulled that from The Tempest because it sounds very similar.
Yeah, so I
yeah,
found it. And it says Prospero's speech is based on a topos descending to Shakespeare from classical times. T.W. Baldwin cites a parallel in Palingenis, a passage adapted by Barnaby Googe.
That's a name. Barnaby Googe.
Wish
Yeah,
that was
dude.
my name.
Yeah, me
Sir Barnaby Googe the second.
Yeah, the closest
Be
analog was
amazing.
discovered by Stevens in a passage from The Tragedy of Darius by William Alexander, published in 1603 and dedicated to King James. Let this worldly pomp our wits enchant, all fades and scarcely leaves behind a token. Those golden palaces, those gorgeous halls, with furniture superfluously fair, those stately courts, those sky encountering walls, ye vanish all like vapors in the air. Okay, I think
see.
Shakespeare just took it and
I
made it sound
every
10
yeah,
times more beautiful.
every time there's one of these instances where Shakespeare like steals or borrows or whatever, it's always 10 times better when Shakespeare does it. That
Yeah.
sounds bad.
Yeah, I was struggling just to read it actually. All right, boys, we got anything else?
I'm good.
Uh yeah, I think we covered a good portion of the book. Or sorry, play in book form. Um I don't know. I'm trying to think.
I think that's good enough. I mean, we could just cut it
Yeah,
there.
we could keep going. We could go on and on with this play. I mean, there is
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much to because like Ariel saying that he's reporting to Prospero that Stefano and Trinculo are red hot from drinking and full of so much courage that they are trying to fight the air for blowing in their face.
yeah.
Also, one of my favorite lines is Trinculo claims to have swam back to
Swims like a duck.
yeah, he swims like a duck, and then Stefano says that you may swim like a duck, but you're built like a goose.
Oh
There's a
my
great
gosh.
line where it only makes sense if you know that sack is a Spanish wine, sweet wine, and they have it on the island. And Trinculo says, "Is there ever a man a coward that has drunk as much sack as I have today?" Which is great. I love that.
That was good. Yeah, guys, I think that's a pod. That was good.
It was fun.
All right. Thanks for listening. Anybody?
We're closing that. That's it.
Yeah, why not? Or we could just
Okay.
we keep chatting. Yeah.
I mean, we're probably going to talk about books just even if we stop recording.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah, let's just keep going then.
What else have
well,
you
has it?
guys been
Yeah,
reading?
yeah. That's what I was going to ask. Anyone else read anything interesting?
Um, I'll go first. I've been all over the place. I was reading he's a beat poet, Coney Island of the Mind. I was enjoying it. It's Lawrence Fignetti, I believe. I started reading that. I've been all over the place in terms of reading. Like I sometimes I like do a very structured sort of reading plan of what I want to accomplish, but lately I've just been kind of dipping into a bunch of different books.
Yeah.
Um, kind of scattered, which happens sometimes. What about you, Liam?
Okay, I dipped into the Phantom of the Opera.
Oh wow.
It is pretty good. It's a bit um I don't know. I'm not loving it the way some people love it. It's
Yeah.
pretty good. It's a kind of a mystery novel. Kind of feels
Okay.
like what it really is.
I didn't know it was
Uh,
a novel. Actually, I've always thought it was like
yeah. It was a
a
novel, and
play.
then it no, it is a play now.
Okay.
Yeah, but originally it was a novel, if published in like 1909 or something.
Oh wow.
Uh, yeah, not much to say on it. I not loving it as much as other people. Trying to read some Saul Bellow. I don't know if you guys that name rings any bells. He's
Doesn't
a
ring a bell.
he's a Jewish American writer that I guess is less popular now. He wrote Herzog, if that also rings any bells. And he's I don't know. It's really it's good. but I'm not, you know what? I haven't read enough to actually give a judgment. But he was popular among Martin Amis and like Christopher Hitchens and stuff like that. So
Okay.
he's got his fans. Thomas, how about you? I guess you've been just reading class stuff for your, you know,
Yeah, reading
course.
stuff for the Visionaries class. Teresa of Alvia, the Interior Castle.
Oh, that's a good
Um,
one.
yeah, it's interesting. Very a lot of stuff about God though. I don't know. It feels a little strange, but we're going to be reading Dante soon, which is going to
Are
be
you
cool.
doing what do you call it? La Vita Nova?
Who's that by?
Dante.
That's Dante.
Yeah. Because we did that for Visionaries. I was in the class, well, now 2 years ago. We did that, and then we began with Hildegard though.
Yeah, yeah. We began with Hildegard as well. Um, I am checking the syllabus now. But otherwise, yeah, I haven't been really reading. I've just been so busy that I haven't. Well, yeah, I've just been reading what we've been reading for the pod. Yeah, we're reading La Vita Nova by Dante next. Is it good?
Oh, it's great. It's great. Yeah.
Should we review it for the pod? Do you think it's
We
worth?
could.
Okay.
I'm game. I'm game. Have you guys done poetry before on the pod? I mean, you have, but like in this new rendition between you two.
No.
I mean
I
Shakespeare.
I mean Shakespeare is the closest
Yes.
thing we
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
to
Exactly.
poetry, really.
Yeah, no, that Dante would be fun.
I've always wanted. I know I suggested this when we were texting, but I've always wanted to tackle the Divine Comedy. Like I feel like
Mm.
that's just essential reading.
I mean,
Um,
I read the Inferno,
Yeah, I did the
and
same thing. I read it. I think I was too young to understand anything.
it was a little heavy for me. I don't know. It was just like going into hell and like all
Going
this
into
stuff
hell.
about sin, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't. It's too much right now. Um, Maybe I just got a bad translation as well. Um, but we
Yeah,
could read. I feel like maybe we shouldn't do La Vita Nova on the pod because no one's heard of it. Like I don't know. I mean, I've never heard of it.
yeah, it's one of his. It's not like what he's acclaimed for. It's basically him overcoming the grief of you know missing his lover, not being. It's unrequited love. That's the whole poem, basically.
Mm,
And it's done in these separate sort of sections where it's beautiful. I mean, but yeah, it's definitely not what Dante is known for. I mean, I think when most people hear the name Dante, they think Inferno, the Divine Comedy. But I mean, I haven't read the Inferno, so I can't compare it to his other works. But I did enjoy it when we read it.
mm,
It's definitely it's definitely dense. Like there's a lot of illusions, a lot of allegories, a lot of there's a lot of symbols too, and sort of the sort of Christian ethos. And I think that's where Dante really shines, I think, as a writer too, because he kind of revolutionized the way people think in terms of it's almost like I think Pow said it, and maybe I'm misquoting him, but he said like after Dante, the church had to catch up with what he did in the Inferno
mm,
and the Divine Comedy. So it is it's like one of those essential canonic texts.
mm. And the La Vita Nuova, I don't even know if I'm saying that right. It's Italian. Means the new life.
Yes, so
And
it's sort of this meditation of grief and restoration.
yeah, it's a
Uh,
love poem.
it's dealing with unrequited love, which was
Okay.
big in the Renaissance because I know there was the other poet Plutarch, I think if I'm pronouncing his name right, or Petrarch. I really should get the name pronunciations right, but he was another Renaissance poet, contemporary of Dante, deals with the same themes of unrequited love. I've read a couple of his poems, so it seemed
Mm,
to be a very popular thing in
yeah.
those days.
And Dante was the first to write in the vulgar tongue,
I
like
believe so.
to write in Italian, because before the church basically controlled all of the matters of printing, and you could only write in Latin, which was the language of authority of the church, and he
Hmm.
decided to write in Italian, which is like um, and vulgar comes from the what Pao was telling me this. It comes from the word um, Volga or something. Um, yeah, which means like the not vulgar as in like gross, but like language of the people. So
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. And I mean, he faced a lot of consequences, I think, because of that. I think he was exiled at a certain point. Like, there's a
yeah.
very interesting history around it, too. I'd love to just read a book
Mm,
knowing about his life and biography, because I think there's controversy with where he's buried, too. I don't think he's buried in Florence.
mm,
Again, I might be totally wrong here.
yeah.
So no one take what I'm saying as facts right now.
Yeah,
But
and he's actually
uh,
he's not canonized as a saint within the Catholic Church. He's actually deemed a heretic, which I think is quite
oh
funny.
wow, I
That's
didn't know
Yeah,
cool.
that.
he's pretty badass.
Wow.
I'll put in a word for reading Orwell's journalism,
Mm. Which,
different from
Yeah, I'd like
poetry.
to do that.
I okay, so there's two parts of Down and Out in London and Paris, and I sort of put the book down after the Paris section, and then I went back and I read the London section like last week, and it's really good. I don't know. The journalism is just better than his fiction. That's my hot take. And
Interesting.
the it's just great. And it's very fact based. It's not there's no editorializing. It's like, this is what happened. And he's detailing his time as being like a very poor person in uh London, and it's just a completely different world. And
Hmm.
it's very very interesting.
yeah, my hot take is that George Orwell's very important to read, and like as an educated human being, you should read 1984 and Animal Farm. Um, but I
But
think
he's
his
not
prose is
the
just
best
boring.
writer. Yeah.
Like his prose is just not interesting to me. It's just so flat and lifeless. Um, yeah, but I mean, it's important to read, and I did enjoy Down and Out. I have Burmese Days on my shelf, and been
Oh my
wanting
God,
to
I
read.
don't even have that one. Yeah, Burmese days. I forgot about that. He was a policeman. He lived so many lives, man. He was a
Really?
policeman in Burma. He was
Wow.
Mm.
yeah yeah. He's done some crazy things.
I also really want to read Road to Wigan Pier.
Yeah, that's been on my
It's a good
list
one
for a
too.
while. I haven't read that. I read his a short journalist piece, "Shooting the Elephants."
Yeah, I
Or
love that one.
yeah, that
Yeah,
one's very good. That one's very good. Yeah, in terms of dystopian fiction, I mean, yeah, like 1984 is definitely hugely influential story, very important.
yeah.
But I
He
find myself more interested in Brave New World. I feel like that one is a very nuanced and interesting take. I think what
mm,
Huxley achieves in that is I I I don't know. I just find it a way more fascinating story because it's less didactic. 1984 kind of has a clear, although it's a tragedy ultimately, it has a sort of clear, I guess, there's a
villain
clear
and
moral
good. Yeah.
fabric in it of good and evil. I what I find interesting about Brave New World, it's like all that's obfuscated and it's very nuanced um, in terms of dystopian fiction. So I
Yeah.
feel like that one, and I feel like if you read it now, it definitely feels very, very relevant. And same with 1984, but I think it's almost people reference it too much now. Like it's like not everything's 1984
Yeah,
here. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
really
yeah.
not. It's really not. It's like yes, North Korea, but
They're
uh
making me wear a seatbelt.
yeah.
1984.
It's just not. It's just not. I feel like it can be people use it as hyperbole a little bit sometimes,
yeah.
and
I was literally about to say I hate the fact that 1984 has become this sort of meme that like it's like
yeah,
oh communism, they want us to pay taxes and they want to build bike lanes. 1984, because when you read the book is like it's so powerful, and what he's writing about is he's writing about London. Like it's
Yeah,
an allegory for the Soviet Union to an extent, but it's also like he's afraid of literally what's happened in London now, that there's so many security cameras within London that it's I think it's higher, or no, it's slightly less than China, but like some of the one of the places where they have some of the most security cameras per capita, like per person, like everywhere there's like hyper
interesting.
surveillance. So it's like, and he was worried about the state of his own society and his own society going towards this like totalitarian, um,
Authoritarian regime.
yeah. And people now are just like, or idiots reference 1984 when they think that their country is becoming communist somehow when it's not. So,
Yeah, yeah. And that's it's almost like it's almost on the level of like how many times people reference the Matrix too. It's just like one of these cultural things that's just like, oh, this guy's red pilled or whatever. It's just like it's just I'm kind of tired of it. And I'm not a huge Matrix guy. Like I don't really think about it much, but I mean, 1984 it's an essential read. I'd like to revisit it at some point because I did read it when I was quite young. Um, I kind of prefer Animal Farm a little more in the sense that I find it's a very funny book, Animal Farm.
oh man, Animal Farm made me depressed.
Oh,
Holy shit,
really? I
dude.
thought it
Yeah,
was
it's brutal.
funny. I thought it was kind of funny. I don't know. Maybe I'm just messed up, but uh, I thought it was. I thought it had a sort of. It's a very dark book, but it
Yeah, it's
has
like, no, go
sort of.
ahead.
I think there's this underlying humor in it. That might just be me, but I don't know. But it is a depressing read. It's not something that you're going to read and you're going to feel okay. I'm ready to take on the world after this. Same with 1984. I think 1984 is definitely a very very depressing novel.
Yeah, I think it has its like humorous moments, but on the surface level, it's like a allegory about animals, and it could be seen as like a kid's book, but underneath the surface, it's so dark. It's like,
Yeah,
and even so the donkey, I forget the donkey's name in the book, but he is basically a stand-in for Orwell himself, and he says that uh, the pigs are taking over and the animals are taking over or whatever, and he just doesn't care. He's like, well, things are just going to continue to go on like they always have, which is
yeah,
badly. Everything sucks
yeah.
and it's going to continue to suck. And it's just such a, yeah, negative view, but, or like pessimistic view of,
It is. I think he was very upset when he was writing those two books. So, and rightfully so. I mean, um, yeah, yeah. Orwell, I feel like you just hear Animal Farm in 1984. You don't really hear about his journalism stuff in the average reader, which I'm curious to see how the style differs because I feel like as you were saying, Liam, he embodied a lot of different lives, so he saw a lot of different things, and as a journalist, he was able to kind of report on all those different experiences he had.
Yeah, yeah. Only thing I have to add is he went to Eton. He was a posh boy growing up. He wasn't lower class, middle class. He was actually
Right.
you know, maybe not the aristocracy, but in that arena. And he chose to give that all up and write for a living.
Wow.
yeah, apparently he claimed to be upper lower middle class.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's like a
Upper
lot of
lower
people
middle class.
say that he had like guilt for his like kind of upper middling class upbringing, so he had to tone it down in his writing or be critical of the upper classes. And for all the people that are like conservatives and that like mention or reference 1984 constantly, Orwell was a socialist.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Animal Farm. The capitalists are still the pigs. You
Yeah.
can't. It's hard to if you're more free market or whatever. It's hard to really reference it as like a pro capitalist
Pro
book.
capitalism book. Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah,
mean, did you ever listen to the album by Pink Floyd, Animals?
no.
Oh, it's really good. It's really good. I mean, it takes sort of the I mean, Roger Waters is a very, you got to tread water when you're speaking about him, but it like takes the whole critique of 1984 to capitalism, and it's sort of his sort of anger against the it's I don't really listen to the lyrics of the album as much as other people. I just think the music's incredible. Like I like Pink Floyd quite a bit, so it's definitely worth giving it a listen if you like Animal Farm.
Yeah, and on Animal Farm, there's the FBI actually commissioned some studio to make an animated
Right.
version
Yeah.
of
I think
Animal
they're
Farm.
the
Yeah, did you guys?
FBI did that.
Yeah, and they changed
That's
the ending
crazy.
so that by the end, uh, all the farm animals get together and they charge into the house where the pigs are staying and basically murder all the pigs, or like, yeah, kick all the pigs out, arrest them or whatever, um, which isn't obviously isn't the ending of Animal Farm, but they wanted to make it seem like the people living under communism, they should just rise up against the authorities and and
Yeah.
take it back and reinstate capitalism because capitalism good. But like if you read the book at the very beginning, the farmers are awful.
Oh yeah.
They're basically like slave drivers.
What did I watch recently? High Anxiety, Mel Brooks. Do you ever see that? It's a spoof of
No.
Hitchcock movies. It's hilarious. I watched it on the plane.
Huh.
Yeah, it was definitely, if you need a good laugh, just watch that. It's very goofy humor, but he's brilliant, Mel Brooks. The Producers is a much better film, but I've been reading a lot. I haven't seen, I don't know, there's just not really a lot of new movies coming out that really interest me. The new Francis Ford Coppola movie looks really good though. Megalopolis. Have you heard of it?
I haven't heard anything about it.
I heard about it, but I don't even
It's
know when
like
it comes out.
it's coming out in like 2 weeks. It's like the
Oh,
most expensive independent film ever made, I think. It's like he made it for $120 million of his own money.
Crazy.
And it's apparently people are saying it's like the reviews are either like this is a masterpiece or this is just shit, like the worst movie ever made. So if a
good sign.
book or a movie is like that, I'm automatically intrigued, because so many classic books were bashed when they first came out. I mean, look at James Joyce. Um so sometimes those things can be good.
Yeah, I like polarizing. Um, yeah. I was just thinking of it in music terms. Like, do you guys know Steve Albini, like the producer, music producer?
And name rings a bell.
He produced the Pixies'
Okay.
first album, Surfer Rosa, and then he produced uh, PJ Harvey's second album. I was just listening to it. It's so good, so raw, and also obviously Nirvana's In Utero, and yeah, I love that really raw sound. But for some reason, Doolittle, the Pixies album, like is a lot. People love that one way more than
Yeah,
Surfer
people
Rosa.
say that's their favorite, one of
Yeah,
their
but
favorite albums.
I like Surfer Rosa better. It just feels more raw and like schizophrenic and weird. I don't know.
I haven't really listened to the Pixies. I mean, I know like some of their hit songs. I haven't really like dived into their their music. But they were part of like that sort of grunge movement in the 90s, right? Or are they more just singer-songwriters, rock?
I think they predate the grunge movement a
Oh,
little bit. Like I
okay.
think Surfer Rosa was like 1989.
Okay.
Um, but they did influence like that really sort of heavy sound and like contrast, like really high contrast between like the really beautiful and like slower and then like the chaotic and really loud. It's yeah.
Are you guys into the Swans?
I've tried listening to them, but
Never.
they're a little bit like
They're crazy.
too
Yeah.
experimental for me. It's
I
like "Be
saw them.
Kind," that song. I've
Yeah.
listened to it a few times, and it's like it's wild.
Yeah, they're wild. I was fortunate. I saw them live actually last year, and
Oh, crazy.
it was a crazy concert. Like it was probably one of the loudest concerts I've ever. They're like kind of known to be one of the loudest bands, and yeah, I was like front row. I think it was in Toronto. It was at Phoenix, and the reason why I mentioned the Swans is they were kind of part of that movement, but they were definitely on the outside. They were always a little too experimental for like any radio sensibilities. So they had a kind of, and they still do to this day, a sort of cult following. But oh my gosh, the show was incredible. Like I had earplugs in, and my ears were still ringing,
Oh
even with
my God.
earplugs. Like I think out of all the years, I've lost a lot of hearing, but that definitely like just went, my levels just went. But it was a really, even if you're not big on their music, and I haven't listened to their newer stuff as much. I just went in, I liked them, and it was a great show. It's definitely all about the sound, and they're repeating these riffs over and over and over again. But it was a good. I still can't listen to their early stuff though. Like their early stuff, it's just way too, as you said, it's just way too just aggressive and nuts.
Yeah, oh man, I think I listened to one of their songs, and it's so eerie. They have like they play a sample of like someone sawing through wood with like a
Oh,
handsaw.
that song. Yeah, I think that's
Like
soundtracks for the blind. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
I like some music that's a little bit experimental and out there, but it's yeah, not accessible, I would say.
No, no.
But uh but I've been on this like really, yeah, this album's called Rid of Me by PJ
I have
Harvey.
to listen to it.
Yeah, it's from 1993. Female vocalist, but produced by Steve Albini, and it's super raw. And it's like, but for some reason, I've been on this like 90s, early 2000s kick. For some reason, maybe it's like a nostalgia for an era before the internet and cell phones,
Yeah.
or like the anti corporate sentiment within the music or something. But yeah, I've got like this really deep nostalgia for the 90s. It's weird.
Do you like Nick Cave in the
I
Bad
haven't
Seeds?
I've heard of him for sure, but I don't
You,
think I've listened to much of
you
his
might
stuff.
like him. Yeah, if you like PJ Harvey. He's pretty cool. He's more of a sort of singer-songwriter. His early stuff is definitely a lot more aggressive, but as he's progressed, he's become more of a sort of rock singer, rock songwriter. Yeah, he's pretty good. I haven't listened to him in years, but I liked him quite a bit many years ago. And he was part of I think he PJ Harvey's on a few of his albums, so I think they collaborate quite a bit. But yeah,
Yeah.
he's definitely interesting.
Yeah, so weirdly I haven't been reading outside of the podcast, and I haven't been watching that much stuff. Like I haven't watched a good movie in a while, but I have been listening to a lot of music, and it's like therapeutic for me right now. I don't know why.
I watched Manhunter, Michael Mann. Have you guys ever seen that? It's based off the book Red Dragon. It's a Hannibal Lecter story. It's a really good movie. Like if you want an 80s like sort of serial killer movie, cop going after the guy, like an obsessed cop. It is like the most 80s movie I think I've seen. Like every shot is like MTV music video, but it's great. It's great. It's like this it has a really, really good momentum and a really, really good plot that just keeps you and some of the shots, I think it's some of the most beautiful things I've seen captured on film.
Did
And
you listen?
if you like the 80s aesthetic, you'll like Michael Mann. I think he did Heat. That's a big movie with Al Pacino and De Niro as well. Sorry,
Yeah.
what were you gonna say?
Yeah, did you listen to our podcast on The Sun Also Rises? Oh, not The Sun
No,
Also
because
Rises.
I haven't read it yet. I hate
Death
to
in the
admit it.
Afternoon, I meant to say.
I want to, but I haven't read it yet. So I figured I would just I did listen to a little bit before coming on because I was like, okay, I'll just get a feel like what is the podcast like, and
It's just us talking
yeah,
nonsense,
basically. So
basically.
uh,
But in the Death in the Afternoon podcast, I mentioned that I watched this documentary from like 1996 about bullfighting. It's called Sun Shadow. It's on YouTube
oh,
and it's
I think I've
super
heard of this.
interesting. It's
Yeah,
like it's you're either gonna love it or you're gonna hate it, but it has this like 90s aesthetic that I absolutely love. Like New
yeah,
Balance trainers, tracks like Reebok tracksuit, like super 90s, but it also has this like this element of the traditional with the bullfighting and it's also about a girl who's like, I think she's like 23 in the record. Like she's 23 years old. And it's also about like, she talks about, the parents are talking about like, oh, well, this is like what she really wants to do. And if we don't let her like follow her dream, she's going to be sad. So it's like, she's like basically like every other, 20 something,
but it's just bullfighting.
it's about
Yeah,
bullfighting. Yeah, it's crazy. And it has really negative reviews, which is like, I'm
yeah,
assuming because
it's
of
kind
the
of
bullfighting
unknown.
aspect.
It looks really unknown in terms of it's called Sun Shadow, and it's directed by Susanna Edwards. Is it that movie?
Yeah, and it follows, I think her name's Christina Sanchez,
Okay.
the bullfighter. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's
this looks
just
good.
super interesting. It was like a really weird find, but I think it's
Yeah,
worth
how did you
watching.
find that? It seems very obscure. Like it's only got like 46 reviews on IMDb.
Yeah, I was trying to find like I wanted to see bullfighting because there's a part in Death in the Afternoon where Hemingway says you have to see it for yourself. Now go watch bullfighting and then you can come back and read the rest of this book. And I was like, okay, well, I got to go check it out. Now I watched that documentary and it was yeah, bullfighting's complicated.
Yeah. Is it still happening to this day?
Yeah, it is.
Wow. Wow.
And it's become like a protected thing by certain because it's banned in not banned, but it's like they don't want it. I think it was banned in the Catalan region. So there's certain governments that don't want it around, and then there's some governments that are like, this is our tr Spanish tradition, it's our heritage, we need to keep it alive. It's an art form. That's what Hemingway argues is that it's an art. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to an interview with Orson Welles, and he was saying he and Hemingway bonded over their interest in bullfighting. Now I got a hot question. Would you or any of you guys personally attend bullfighting? Would you see it?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. I will.
I'm in that camp too. Like I'm the type of
I go
guy where
once.
I
Check it
just
out
want to
once.
see something. Like I'm not. I don't know about the whole. I know there's a again, there's probably a whole debate about this topic, and there's a lot of nuances on either side. But I think sometimes you just have to see things to truly judge it and make a conclusion yourself, or maybe not even judge it and just see it and see what it's all about. I don't
I would
know.
say
Yeah, I
that
agree.
I wouldn't go see it live in person because I've already seen the documentary and I kind of I get it now. I understand why someone would want to watch it. And I do see it. It's almost like a dance when you watch it, and their movements and the dress is just so beautiful. But at the same time, it's yeah, I'm conflicted.
Yeah,
It's the killing of and basically unnecessary suffering of an innocent animal, which I like morally don't agree with. But at the same
yeah,
time, I can see why people would find it exhilarating, beautiful. The reason why Hemingway thought it was so beautiful was because um, in the moment when the bullfighter is dealing the killing blow, he becomes almost immortal. And if he does it well enough, then the audience shares in that feeling. And for a moment, in that moment, they feel immortal too. And there's this like beautiful thing of how it's the only art form where the artist is at risk of dying at any moment. So there's this danger element to it as well. Like, and I compared it to like Formula One racing, where like the participants, there's a risk that they can die, and that's exhilarating in a way. So I get it, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to see it in person. I don't. I just didn't. I wouldn't want to
Yeah,
support it
it's
personally.
like a dance with death, really. It's
Yeah.
a dance. It's a dance with sort of fate in a way. It's poetic. It's very poetic. But yeah, I don't know. I have to say I'm conflicted about it too myself. Um, people are some. I hope no one misquotes any of us here. It says
Yes, we all
two
support bullfighting.
podcasters support bullfighting.
You should all go and watch a bullfight right
We'll
now.
be on like a PETA watch list, and they'll just have our
Oh
images.
no, dude. I'm like 90% vegetarian because I
Oh
on a daily
wow,
yeah, like on a daily basis I don't eat meat, but like if I go to my dad's place or I go to a friend's place and they're like having pizza with meat on it or like they're having burgers or
yeah,
something, I'll just eat it. Like I have no aversion to it, but at the same time, like factory farming is awful for the like
yes.
everyone involved, the farmers, the animals, the environment, and yeah, just I don't want to support it.
Have you noticed any like personal health benefits from being vegetarian or being primarily vegetarian?
Um, I feel good all the time, which is like that. I don't think that's a consequence of just the
Yeah,
just
yeah,
the food.
yeah,
It's also because I'm running now. I'm going
yeah.
to the gym 5 times a week.
Oh
Like,
wow.
yeah, in a pursuit to just feel good. People complain about, or a lot of people on the internet or guys like talk about like you have to suffer and like um, all this garbage of being enduring suffering and all that kind of stuff. I just find it like I feel good when I do it. And it's actually kind of fun. Like I went for a run this morning, and well, I was listening to Deftones actually.
Oh wow.
I was listening to White Pony. It's a sick album. It's so good. And I just had a great run, and it
Yeah,
felt freeing.
running's nice. I've started to do it a little bit. Like I'm not really consistent with it. I do it kind of intermittently throughout the month, but I don't know. It definitely you just feel good after running. You do a run and
Yeah, yeah, you
you
feel
do
good.
you do it like it's hot here, so you do a nice cold shower and it's
Oh
amazing.
my God, did
It's
that this
like
morning?
yeah, I did that this morning. I did that. And I had it was like I was at a get together last night, so I had a little too much to drink.
Uh-oh.
So I totally recovered from that. Like now I feel totally back to normal. I'm a little tired, but
Yeah, and a good hangover is a nice, it's not the worst thing in the world.
no.
It
It's a
can be a
No.
very
reminder that you're
stabilizing thing.
it's a reminder that you're mortal.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So uh
I mean, should we end it? What do you
I
think?
feel like we could
I
just
feel like
talk
we're
about
rambling
shit
so much.
forever. I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you all if you made it this far for listening to the many ramblings of the three of us. We appreciate it.
yeah, thanks for listening.
Have a great day.